They're all invested in the stock market. The market is not going to go up forever. It's gone up 60% in 6 months with no justification other than the fact that the United States government has given away piles of money, along with the Federal Reserve, to the banking and Wall Street and insurance interests, who in turn are leveraging it and gambling in the market. And that's why the market's up. Where it's going to end, I don't know, but I don't want to be on the other side of it.
We know it's very interesting that the FDIC claims it's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. It's a wonderful term, the full faith and credit of the United States government. The only trouble is the United States government is bankrupt. And would you lend money to or depend upon an insurance company that was backed by the full faith and credit of an insurance company that was bankrupt? I wouldn't. Our telephone number, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. And let's go to Rod, who's calling from Santa Cruz, as soon as my producer passes Rob over for us. So we'll be with him in just a moment. In the meantime, Bob, certainly your advice, getting into gold and silver, and certainly, there's Rod. Hi, Rod. How are you doing?
Good afternoon.
Do you have a question or comment for our guest?
Yeah, I have a question for Bob. Bob, with the things changing in the country as much as they are and polarization happening, I hear talk of people saying the South must rise again, and they believe that's to preserve constitutional liberty. And have you, in your conversations with others, have any insight into that idea of the South rising again to stand for constitutional freedom?
I've heard it expressed differently. I haven't heard those terms in many years. And so I think what people have to do is bond together and try to find a constitutional way out of this. And if they can't, well, then they better have food and a filter, and they better get the Cosmoline off their weapons, and they better have plenty of ammo. And in fact, I got a letter today that Georgia Arms, which makes reloads, they haven't been able to get the components for 9 months. And so the government is behind that because they supply the brass. And so they know where this thing's headed, and there's a good chance that that's where it's headed. And we got a good chance at nuclear war. Whether it's going to happen, I don't know either. But I know that chance is there, and it's a strong chance.
Okay. Rod, I think that the term the South shall rise again, of course, many people equate that with slavery. Well, the war was not fought for slavery, the Civil War. It was fought for states' rights and to try to restrict the power of the central government. They didn't pass the Emancipation Proclamation until either late 1862 or 1863. Had nothing to do with slavery, but they needed an excuse. They were having riots in the North against the draft. They killed 2,000 people one day who didn't want to be drafted to fight in a war they didn't believe in, and they needed an excuse, so they said, well, the war is about slavery. Well, what we need is for people to understand that slavery was inherently wrong. What we need to do is to understand that America was founded upon the proposition of limiting the power of the central government so men could be free. One of the big problems is those senators back there and congressmen have been drinking the water in Washington, D.C., and of course there's lead in the pipes, and a lot of them got lead intoxication. I was reading a study just now where they noted that the lead levels in the blood of the children in Washington, D.C. is unusually high, and just as we saw reading about the fall of Rome related to the poisoning of the water by lead, I fear that it's not only lead, but the metals in our vaccines and certainly the other things that they're putting in our water and our food that are poisoning the minds of these senators and congressmen, and they really believe that they can solve all the problems of the world with, of course, their power. And They are violating constantly the oath they've sworn to uphold our Constitution, and many of them are traitors to this land. Anything else, Rod?
No, thanks for your insight, Stan.
God bless. Okay, fine.
I'd like to add to that, too, and that is that between 1840 and 45, all slavery stopped in the South. It was too expensive. They just couldn't afford it anymore. And so the shipments that had been not told that the market for slaves was no longer there in the American South, they were dumping these Africans, black people, off of the ships off the coast of Panama and Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and so on. And if you go there today, you'll find large colonies of people who speak Spanish, but as well as English. And they have been there since the 1840s and 50s. And so they've been there, 150 years. But the point is that it was no longer profitable.
Well, let's go to Mike, who's calling us from Missouri. Hi, Mike. How are you doing? Question or comment?
How are you, Dr. Stan?
Doing fine.
And how are you, Bob?
No, this is Bob.
Well, this is Bob. Okay.
This is Bob Chapman.
I'm a big reader, and I read the George Ure sites, and he's predicting something around the 25th of this month. Boy, we're printing up a lot of dollars. There's a lot of shenanigans going on. I'm wondering if Bob has any idea what could bring the market down around that time.
Well, remember, that's this coming Sunday, the day of our conference. Let's hope it doesn't happen on the 25th. Any thoughts on that, Bob? We've heard these predictions, the 25th of October, the 25th of October, like the Ides of March. Well, so you hang on, Mike, because we're going to go to a break, and I want you to hear Bob's reply. But a lot of people are setting dates. I'm not smart enough to set a date, or maybe, for whatever reason, I don't think you can set a date, because, boy, if you're wrong, you sure look foolish. We'll be back in just a moment with Bob Chapman, and we'll wrap up the program, and you hang on there, Mike.
Thanks.
A moment here. Well, Dr. Stan, we've got Carol Lee calling from Monterey, wants to know if her Social Security check she has directly deposited in the bank is safe, and Bob says for now it is, and in the future we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. Carol Lee, we're living in uncertain times, and of course we make all of our preparations if it were up to us, and we pray as if it's up to God, and just have to wait and see how it unfolds. Anyway, we're out of time, but thanks for calling, Carol Lee, and Bob Chapman, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll look forward to talking to you tonight.
Right. Thank you.
God
Bye-bye.
bless. Bye-bye. Okay, fine.